You're very welcome to the Women's Rugby Pod. A little bit different this week, or certainly for the first pod of this week. It is a very, very warm welcome to BBC Wales' Lauren Jenkins, one of the busiest ladies in broadcast at the moment. Lauren, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Straight into, not complaining, straight into the Women's Six Nations from the men. I'm very much enjoying it. One atmosphere it was in Cardiff on, God, what day are we? Saturday afternoon. Yeah, and it's been a tough time in Welsh rugby, raining time. So it felt like a real change. There was a change in the air, and it was a pleasure to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gary Heatley from GH Media. Anyone want to know anything about Scottish women's rugby, then Gary is the man. Gary, how are we doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good, thank you.
Enjoyed your trip to Newcastle?
Yeah, no, it was great to get down to Newcastle. Obviously, tough result for Scotland, but some glimpses of what they can do, and also just great to be there for St Hunters last game. It was a great atmosphere and a sort of privilege to be there to see that, really. So yeah, it was great.
Good stuff. We're going to go through round one, mainly looking back. We'll sort of just touch on next week as well. But just going through the games chronologically, of course, we started up with Wales against Ireland, 31-5 to Wales. Tries for Hannah Jones, Alex Callender, Kira Bevan, Silela Tuapolotu, who was also player of the match. Nicola Friday got one back for Ireland. Lauren, it was some start from Wales. I mean, if you're turning a page over for a new chapter, starting a World Cup cycle, too many faults.
Not at all. I mean, this was the moment I think things finally clicked for the team. And it was certainly the moment investment was evident to see. 2 years after separating what was really a humiliating 45-0 defeat to Ireland, they go on to record one of their biggest wins in the competition against the same opposition. And it is their biggest win in the tournament since 2015. It's more significant now, I think, because it shows how much potential there is, not just in this team, but in the game as a whole. If you do invest in women's rugby, I had a conversation with Philippa Tuttiett last week, and we were talking about that 3rd to 6th place, and I guess, is there a reason to believe one or more of those teams should be better or worse than 2022? Because everyone sort of beat each other, didn't they, last year by I think it was 8 points or fewer. By that Italy v Ireland game, there was only a try, or it was. The result was in jeopardy going into the final 10 minutes of every game. And I think, yes, it's only 80 minutes of rugby, but going on round one, you'd like to think Wales are that team now. And we know that every team in some shape or form is professional and have professional contracts, but they're on different parts of that journey. And it shows you need at least a year to really reap the rewards.
What did you make of the roar of the Welsh Dragon, Gary?
Yeah, no, very impressive. When you hear so much from coaches and players leading up to tournaments and matches, about a quick start, and that's exactly what Wales did. Really, they came out the gates flying, didn't they? And their pack really got them on the front foot. And that first half an hour, I was sort of sitting in the press room in Newcastle watching that before Scotland game, and I was already thinking to week 2 when Wales obviously come up to Scotland, because they were looking fairly good, and to get the bonus point in such quick time, I mean, that's just the perfect start for them, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was, and I really like, Lauren, the blend of the side. Yeah, you've had a few more experienced players, obviously, notably Shane Lillicrap has stepped away now. Hannah Jones has got the full armband now, not just half of it that she had during the World Cup, but the blend, and then the youngsters like Tuapolotu comes in, who had an outstanding game. She keeps moving up a row each tournament. I'm not quite sure where she's going to be next year, but because she was second row last year. It's a really nice blend, and players like Kira Bevan, who I thought has been questioned whether she starts, so Fionn Lewis and what have you, but she really stepped up as well. It looks like everybody's blending nicely together.
Yeah, I particularly like the centre combination of Lake and Hannah Jones. They beat 6 or 5 defenders respectively, punched holes in the Irish defence. And it's hard to pick what pleased you the most, because Cecilia, deserving player of the match, was in the middle of everything. The dominance of the pack, I think, set the tone early on. But they weren't just relying on the maul and scrum. They varied the attack. They had width inside balls, scored 4 tries in 33 minutes in the end. And they have also got competition for places, I think, which is driving them on. We know Shuan's retired, girls like Alicia Butcher's a sideline, but you look at that back row, you had Bethan Lewis starting, but then Siôn Ed forced to come on. They're very versatile in where they can play. She moved to 6. And it looks like there's a lot to be excited about when it comes to this Welsh side. There were negatives as well, you know, and I don't think anyone's getting too carried away because of where Ireland are. They conceded 14 penalties, 7 knock-ons, but perhaps you expect that if you're trying a few more things in attack. But yeah, look, I think you do need to put that Ireland team performance in context. You know, they've just turned pro, several experienced players missing with the Sevens, no Rugby World Cup, which has so many positives. It's not just about playing the best in the world. You know, Wales played New Zealand twice. It's also that time together off the pitch to bond, you know, that time that really contributes to a healthy, happy atmosphere, which Wales have been crying out for over the last few years.
On the other side, Gary, Ireland only 3 tests since the last 6 Nations, and obviously, as Laura just said, not at the World Cup, and those contracts which some have turned down because of having to live away to play their club rugby and what have you, and that showed that they are behind the 8 ball at the minute, aren't they, Ireland?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think as Lauren said there, you know, the other countries will also have that time away at the World Cup together, the time before that as well. So you know, you really can't just throw a group of players together and expect them to get results. I know some of them all played in the Celtic Challenge, but it's a massive step up from that competition. And then obviously just the start of this week, we've heard that their Sevens head coach Aidan McNulty's left his post. So you know, there's obviously a lot of things going on behind the scenes. I know quite like Greg McWilliams' quote saying excuses are for losers, but you know, if he wanted to, he's got plenty at the minute. So yeah, it's interesting times, but I guess for the young players that are coming through, you know, it's a great opportunity for them to show what they can do. And you know, there was sort of, you know, in the second half, I guess, a few positives. So you know, for those young players, I guess it's now up to them to just sort of show what they can do and try and step up to the mark. But it's going to be a tough tournament for them.
I think we almost need to see Ireland play again to really judge where they are, because do we end up looking at that first half as being their worst of the tournament and the second half performance closer to what they're like in the rest of the games? Because it was 5-5 in that second half. And I think we probably do need to make the point that they were, you know, Wales had the win behind them in the first half. They'd won the game by half time. So yeah, it's a tough start, and as you mentioned, Greg, post-match, I talked to him and he said, look, we've got a lot of soul searching to do, and you know, the players looked crestfallen, not too dissimilar to Wales 2 years ago. But I guess Wales have set the standard now, and hopefully will spur others on to invest in their game. I'm not saying Wales are the finished article by no means, and all of their match day 23 are playing in the Premier 15s, which perhaps isn't ideal for the long term. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see where Ireland go from here.
Yeah, and Wales are those sides, those nations catching up. It was a good example of where, as you say, the steps you can move forward. And finally, just on that game, because we do need to move on. The crowd came out in their droves, Lauren, as well. A record home crowd absolutely smashed it. That says a huge amount as well to everyone, including the union.
Yeah, 4,962, a record crowd, which is probably going to get smashed again when England arrive because of the proximity, of course. But look, the Arms Park is the best venue in Wales for men's domestic rugby. It's in the shadow of the Principality Stadium, in the middle of the capital, people pouring out to the street afterwards, to the bars of Westgate Street. And I felt that atmosphere. It's a special atmosphere watching Cardiff play there several times over the last few years, and I felt that very same atmosphere for the women on Saturday. So you know, they're where the men's game are, the club game is. Of course, you know, the end goal is you get to a point where it's closer to a men's international, but it's on its way. And I think to be fair, they had it for the Scotland game last year. I just wasn't there for that occasion. So, but it was special and it was significant for me for sure.
Speaking of crowds, we'll ski sock seamlessly to a sellout crowd up at Kingston Park. Going not a long journey for you. An outstanding atmosphere. Good game of ruggers for a jolly good egg in Sarah Hunter. It was a fitting send-off for the 141 capper, 85 caps as captain, MBE, World Player of the Year, 9 Grand Slams, etc., etc.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely brilliant. You know, just before the game, just being there and seeing the crowd filling up. You know, lots of young girls and boys from both Scotland and England, which was great to see. And then obviously, you know, Sarah coming out with her niece for the national anthems and things. That was just a great moment for them and the family. And then, yeah, I mean, as I say, you know, the way she played for the sort of hour she was on the pitch, you know, she looks like she could still go on for a few years. But I think the best and the kind of greatest get the chance to choose their own time to step away. And I think it was fitting for her and just a great day all round for her in England.
And on the park, 12 tries in all for England, wasn't it? Molly Packer hat-trick. She was player of the match. Claudia McDonald with a couple, Cocaine, a couple, Theo Kabir. What impressed you most looking on as a Scotsman, possibly through your fingers?
No, I mean, I think, you know, obviously England coming off the back of the World Cup defeat, there might have been a slight hangover and obviously a bit of changing personnel, but, you know, the start wasn't the quickest, but then once they got into their stride in the middle period, they were just, their forwards really took it to Scotland. I mean, Kabea, you know, I think she only just turned 21. What a player she's turning out to be alongside Packer. And Claudia McDonald's 2 tries. The first one, she ran a really good angle to go over, and then the second one, you know, the pace that she had was just superb. So, you know, it's just the options that England have, and I think as sort of Rachel Markham said after the game, you know, when they get ahead and get on that front foot, they're very, very hard to stop. And I guess just the variations of their play would have pleased Simon Middleton and the rest of the coaching team.
Watching on as a sort of a neutral, as it were, I don't know whether I'm right in saying it. If you're going to turn a page, and there was plenty of column inches written about England and their style at the World Cup, it looked as though they certainly wanted to move things along, if not move things slightly wider as well. How impressed with you were with England's attack in particular?
Yeah, without, I guess, moving too far away from their traditional strong points. You know, the rolling maul. Packer completed her treble, didn't she, with 2 quick fire tries from driving mauls. But you're right, their set piece dominance was blatant from the first scrum, really. But I think the way Holly conducted the backs was, and I haven't seen a huge amount of her, but she took her opportunity, took the shirt from Zoe Harrison and made a real statement, I think. And, you know, I was looking at the stats today, points per visit to 22, 4.5. I've become a bit obsessed with that stat because of how poor Wales men were in the Six Nations. And look, they were just so clinical. 13 line breaks and only 5 penalties conceded. So, you know, if you're making those sort of numbers, you're winning test matches.
You certainly are. There were a few little starlets, a few little chinks of light go for Scotland. I mean, most people, since the game, have pointed to a reasonably good start, reasonably good end, which, you know, is good in terms of sort of fitness and what have you, and some impact off the bench. What will they take from last week to build into this week? Yeah,
I mean, I think obviously the contracts only coming in December for 28 players. It was a good start. It was, I think, when England were only 1 try up, Emma Orr just inches short from scoring a try, and then that middle period England just dominated. But then at the end, Chloe Rowley scored a good try, had another good run. Beth Blacklock on her debut had a good break as well. And Brian Easton was keen to point out after the game, you know, the impact of the bench. I mean, in the last couple of years, he's been kind of reticent to use the bench at times, and you know, we all know now that rugby's a 23-player game. You can't really get away with that. So, you know, that trust in the sort of players below the starting 15 is growing, and you know, obviously they're still missing a large batch of players. You know, Sarah Bonner, Jade Kunkel Roberts, and about 3 or 4 others. So was a game for newer faces to step up, and I think a tough game, but I think they did that. And the young centre pairing, Meryl Smith and Emma Orr, 21 and 19 respectively, was pretty promising. So I think they've taken quite a few positives out of it. I mean, it's obviously a massive game against Wales now this weekend.
I mean, we don't want to do a sort of Matthew Tate on Emma Orr, but I mean, she's going to be special, isn't she?
Oh yeah, I think so. I remember her debut was just last year against Wales. A year ago now, she was just 18 then. And after that game, Rachel Malcolm was saying these kind of players only come around once every so often. And since then she's played at Commonwealth Games 7. She's played the World Cup. She's just 19 now, turns 20 next week. But yeah, I think she's got the game. She looks like one of those players that's really calm out there, which not every player does. So I think she's got a big future.
Is anyone back for this week? You mentioned the injuries there. Molly Wright as well is in that list. Sarah Bonner's going to be a couple of weeks, sound like she properly did her collarbone. Where's Jay Conkle Roberts at?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had a chance to speak to Brian again since Saturday night, but I think judging from what he's been saying the last couple of weeks, I would think all of the injured players will not be back until after the Easter break. So yeah, I would imagine there won't be too many changes to the 23 this week, but you never know with someone like Jade. They can always make a quicker recovery than they think, because they seem to be kind of superhuman, those players. But yeah, I think they'll probably be around similar lines for the squad this week.
And even though they're on a losing run, I think it's 10 losses in a row against all opposition since beating Colombia last year. Do you think they'll be going into that game v Wales knowing they've all been pretty close over the last few years? It's a different feeling, isn't it, than going into games v England?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think obviously in those 10 losses, 2 of them against Wales, the Six Nations game last year, leading at halftime 19-7, and lost that game. I think Sinead Harries kind of turned that around, and then the World Cup game, a lot of chances, couldn't quite get over the line. So, I think the Wales are a team they enjoy playing, but also one that they'd quite like to get one over on. But obviously Wales, played well last week. So I think back at home with 3 home games this year, they've really got to be targeting those. And I think it, is a confidence belief thing as well for some of the younger players. I know they've been speaking to Aaron Walsh, the sports psychologist, before the tournament, just turning those 1-2 point defeats into 1-2 point wins. So I think it's I think it's shaping up nicely, but I think it's also shaping up nicely to be a great game on Saturday.
It is going to be tight, Lauren. What do Wales need to get right to come away from the Health Stadium, I should say, with a win?
Yeah, it's a tough one, because even though you talk about the way the set piece gave them a platform into that game, it's about how much of a step up this Scotland team is going to be. I've also just seen now Gwen Crabb put on Instagram, the only way I can describe this feeling is heartbreak. Pretty hard to get my head around what's happened, but I'm just desperately sorry for her. Look, it didn't affect them at all, their performance on Saturday, but on a personal level, she's only just come back, hasn't she, from a long-term injury. December, I think she came back. So, but yeah, look, they're full of confidence. Yeah, like Johan Cunningham couldn't stop smiling post-match. I'm delighted with the performance, delighted with the players, delighted with the stadium. They're in a good place. I suppose the one thing I would say is that the Arms Park will obviously provide them a different atmosphere to it's the Dam Health Stadium, is it, in Edinburgh?
It is, yeah.
But look, I think we'll learn more. Obviously, it's a cliche thing to say, we're going to learn more about every team after round 2. But if Wales can go out there and put on a similar performance as they did via Ireland, then suddenly you're thinking they could give France a game. Yeah,
I don't disagree. And beautifully done, Lauren, because we're now just going to seamlessly move on to the France. She's done this before, ladies and gentlemen.
Twice I've set you up.
Yeah, beautiful. I'll knock them away. Thank you. 12-22 it was to France. Weather played a huge factor. Who wants to kick us off, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, the weather over there obviously was fairly testing, I guess. There was a lot of errors in the game from both sides, and I think Italy will be sort of looking back at that one, maybe thinking it's one that got away. I mean, I think it was 15-7 for quite a long spell till near the end when Bouchard scored. And yeah, it was. It wasn't. I think for both sides, it wasn't probably their sharpest performance, but with a lot of changes again since the World Cup for both. Yeah, I think France will just have been delighted to tick that one off as a win and get out of there and get back to working for the next game against Ireland. But yeah, I think it was. Yeah, the weather played a big part. I think, just errors at key points for both sides when they were trying to get momentum. I think it was a bit stop-start. I mean, Gabrielle Vernier was probably, she was named player of the match, but I think she was probably the sort of standout player just with the kind of skill that she showed. And yeah, I say France will just be happy to have got away with the win there.
And looking at France, obviously the changing both coaching setups are on. David Ortiz and Guillaume Mignot. There's some continuity there because there was sort of assistance before Giovanni Ranieri taken over for Italy. It's a bit like losing Sarah Hunter, isn't it? Losing Andrea Di Giandomenico. Always a mouthful, that always has been. Especially when you're trying to say it quickly in commentary. Too early to see any sort of real change that Ranieri's putting on this Italian side?
Yeah, I think it's probably true for both sides for that game on Sunday. I think France showed signs of being a team still getting to grips with new coaches, a new style potentially, and a handful of new players. The one thing we did learn about France is they can still rely on a powerful scrum, which was particularly helpful in that second half when the weather changed. And they obviously had depth on the bench, which Italy didn't have. Probably not too dissimilar to the way the men started the Six Nations tournament. And I see France just building from here. They know that when they need to turn it on, they probably still can. We saw glimpses of dangerous attacking play that I think is going to cause most opponents in this tournament a bit of trouble. But plenty of handling errors and missed opportunities as well, I think, given some of the territory possession dominance they have. I think, I don't know what you think, Johnny, but the perceived wisdom is obviously that England and France appear and as a step down to the rest. But do you think that gap from round one, the gap looks to have closed a bit? England still out ahead, but France less convincing?
Yeah, I agree. There was a raft of French players, wasn't it? And really, really good players on the park, but off the park. Sofiane Diaye been around for a very, very long time, but a real sort of central figure off the field for them. Mayans, these kind of people, kind of decided to stay with the seven. So Carla Arbe's youngster on her debut at fly half, I think she looked reasonably comfortable. I think that the others are closing the gap. Certainly, I think France will find their feet again. And when you have the likes of Vernier to lean on as and when you need to, and then you bring off Jessie Tremoulier. I know this is her last few games, but she comes on and just like Galaxy, isn't she? Just so smooth on the ball. She's just an exceptional player. So yeah, I think that gap is shortening. France go on to play Ireland. We can only see one result there, can we, peeps?
You'd imagine so. I mean, France obviously going as massive favourites for that, but I think as Lauren touched on earlier, we're maybe judging Ireland a lot on that one game against Wales, but being back at home in front of their friends, family, you'd imagine after the men's Six Nations win and the under-20s Grand Slam as well, that there's going to be a good crowd there at Musgrave Park, and that'll make a big difference for the Irish team and squad, and yeah, they'll want to bounce back from where they were. But yeah, you'd imagine that France should win that one pretty comfortably. They'll be interested to see how Ireland do at home. Yeah.
It's not the ideal game for Ireland. They almost, need a Scotland or Italy, don't they, after this? I don't quite know how they approach that. Do they just keep things very simple and think, right, we need to concentrate on our set piece. We need a clear maul defence, because France would have been watching that Wales game.
Yeah, 100% will. And as you say, they could have had a worse game. home comforts, certainly as Gary alluded to. But we're all going for an away win there. That's 3:15. Ireland against France. 5:30. The Dam Health Stadium. Scotland against Wales. Is there any point asking you two who you think is going to win, or is it one each? Lauren.
Yeah, that's a tidy way to finish, isn't it? Should we go one? I'm going to go Wales.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a really close game. Obviously, my heart would say Scotland, and I think the team have got it in them to do it, but they need to get off to a quick start in this game and not let the nerves kind of get to them. But yeah, it's going to be a cracker.
All right, I'm going to push you more because it's fairly obvious you're both going to go for your home nations. Scoreline. Is it going to be a Kira Bevan special to win it by a single point?
I think it will be a close scoreline. Maybe, I'm going to go more than 3. 7 points, maybe like 35-28 to Wales.
I was going to go for something like 22-17 to Scotland. I think it'll be a bit tighter, but yeah, as long as it's a home win, I'll be happy.
Okay, what 22-17 did you say?
Yes.
It is 35-28. That is bold, Lauren. I like
it. I'm already questioning myself just because their defence was so good in Cardiff. So is it too late to change my mind now?
It's in the ledger.
Okay. And anyway, you should never change your mind, should you?
No, absolutely not. And then finally on Sunday, Upper Franklin's Gardens, England against Italy. The post Sarah Hunter era starts. But we were expecting a home win, are we?
I will go 40-12.
Oh, if we're going for score predictions again, okay. 35-7, I think it'll be.
Johnny, are you playing? Are you partaking?
No. What, Splinters? What? Sorry, no. Yes, I'm going for a France win, England win. I'm not sure about the middle one. What? Sorry. I know. I think France win comfortably. 22 by 20 points plus. I think England will win by 8. That's their bogey team. They don't like Italy, England. Never have. Red cards, kids with clean yellow cards. They struggle, especially in first halves. But I think they will have too much. 15 to 18 point difference there. Scotland, Wales. Oof. Oh my word. I have to go Wales, purely because I am half Welsh. But no, with my analytical hat on, I was hugely impressed by Wales. You've got to play what's in front of you, but the pack dominance. I think the changes behind the scenes, well, some coaching changes, and individual performances from youngsters and experienced players. I think Wales will take that one.
Yeah, and I would just add, it's not all about professionalism with Wales. You know, the spine of that team play at Gloucester Hatbury, who I think have lost one game all season. Half Blacks play for Bristol, so you've got real cohesion there. And they've also employed a full-time attack coach in Sean Connor, who's making a difference. So there are, some perfect marriage. There are plenty of elements that contributed to last weekend's performance.
Yeah, and I think with Scotland probably still missing the quite key forwards. Obviously the England game wasn't one to judge, but the 4 top ball carriers were all backs. I think they really need some of the other forwards, the second rows and the back rows, Rachel McLaughlin and Edie Gallagher, likes to carry a bit more if they're going to really challenge Wales. And also, Johnny, I was just going to ask, obviously post Sarah Hunter, what's the England back row makeup going to be now with Sarah not there?
I think he has 2 options. One would be fairly obvious to move Poppy Cleal back to 8. She was obviously player of the tournament a couple of years back at 8 when Sunter was injured. I think he quite likes Poppy Cleal in the second round. Go on.
Is she an injury doubt?
Not that
okay.
I know of. Sarah Beckett is another option. She was on the bench. And Kath O'Donnell, I know Simon Middleton is a big fan of Kath O'Donnell. I know many were surprised that she was on the bench for the World Cup final rather than Rosie Gallagher. And you'd keep the Underhill Curry sort of could be a Packer axis, wouldn't you? All day long. So yeah, I think that's where they'll go. But look, I am conscious that Lauren has a class to go to. She is a lady in high demand. Gary's off for 15 pints and a curry, and
Not stereotypical right here, are we?
yeah,
I'd much rather be going for a curry, I've got to say.
sweeping generalizations everywhere. Guys, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Perhaps we can do this again during the Six Nations. I've really enjoyed the chat. Gary, have a good evening. Thanks so much for your time.
Cheers, thank you very much.
Lauren, take care.
Thanks, Johnny. Thank you very much. Speak soon.
Take
Bye.
care. Cheers. Bye.